Hey guys, we are live.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Welcome back. Welcome back to part 2 of the Demand Better podcast. And our topic today is research. Let's not forget about the mission. We're here to educate and empower you. This episode is going to focus on research and media literacy. We want to be the consumer's guide in the Kelly Blue Book for you as you maneuver your way through the fitness and health space. Hey, Bo, what's up, man?
What's going on?
We got a guest here too, brother.
Do.
Somebody new. You put a model on here, huh?
This is an on-air personality, so he's got to be prepared. He's got to come right. He's got to look good. So yeah, Faraz I met in New York City. He was visiting from Dubai, and that was before I moved to Dubai, and I was planning to. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna be where you come from. So yeah, it was a match made in heaven, some might say. But yes, Faraz is. I'll let you talk more about our friendship or whatever you want to talk about. Introduce yourself.
The funny thing is, Corona, that's exactly how Bo introduced himself. That was back in I want to say 2015.
2014, I actually, and I'm about to, hold on. Oh, it's the wrong way.
Bad preparation.
And that was the picture where Bo was helping me move better. And he was like, yo, I'm gonna be in Dubai, we gotta connect, let's grab a cup of coffee,
we gotta do this.
That's it. and instantly I felt Bo's energy, and I was like, this guy is just absolutely phenomenal, not only in the box but also outside the box.
The box is the thing that CrossFitters call the gym. Anyone who doesn't know that terminology, just
there we go. Yeah, and in all fairness, I did not even know when I started my CrossFit journey. Which, by the way, Bo, why is it called a box?
I think it was coming from the black box, and everything is done in there. A black box. The concept is not the flight thing that you find after a crash, but the black box is where you throw ideas in, and again, it kind of ties into research. So I appreciate you asking that question in our theme today. So the black box is where you do your lab, you research and investigate things, and that should be the only factors that influence things in that box. So if you're in the box and you're doing thrusters and pull-ups, those are the things that you need to focus on and we can measure and look at. So I think that's where it comes from. I'm not 100% sure, but here's the proper photo for those listening on the audio version. It's at Reebok CrossFit Fifth Avenue there on was it 37th and Fifth Avenue. That's Vanessa doing a pull-up behind you, and you're doing a hip flexor stretch with a banded distraction. One of my favorite stretches still to this day, mobilizations. Anyway, we'll remove
Faraz,
that.
looking good, brother. Looking good.
Thank you, Corona. I appreciate that. I really do. And I'm glad that I'm actually surprised Bo still has a picture. How did you find it?
It was in my phone. I saved it somewhere, and I was like, I'm sure this will come up at some point. And here it is. It's come up. So
now I feel bad. I wish I had a picture of Bo. From 2014.
Right. Hey, Bo.
Right. Yeah.
Bo, why don't you take us through the summary of what happened last week, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, so the big takeaways we talked about from last week, we had our kind of first 2 chapters of this, looking at research, again, so the consumer can have a better understanding when we see something like red meat causes cancer, and there's this scare tactic, and we're going to talk about that. That's why we brought Faraz on of you got 90 seconds. If it bleeds, it leads, right? And so we tried to touch on those things. We got the expert here this week. So we dove into, some of the ways that we start having conversations. And I brought up Adam Grant, his book, Think Again. One thing we look at is you can be a scientist, a prosecutor, or a politician. Now, the scientist is what we should all aim to be. And you're seeking the truth, not just to win. So whatever side of the aisle or coin or whatever you want to say you're on, it's not just saying, hey, like, again, red meat is bad. It's like, well, what are the nuances? What are the truths? What does the science show? Are there other ways we could look at this? What is the other side saying? So that was a big part of what we talked about. We looked at evidence-based practice, how it's not just, there's a study that shows this, which is, again, where you get these 90-second tidbits or sound bites, and that's what the news has to report is new study found, what we have COVID going on right now. It's 2022, March 18th, and something might come out of, long COVID, for anyone not familiar with that, and it improves with vitamin D level supplementation. So, and again, that quick soundbite could be something very useful, but it could also be a very deceiving kind of just clickbaity type thing. So, and this is unfortunately where the world's gone to. So that's a big part of the concepts we're talking about. Another big one is the more confident somebody is and says, you know, the study proves this thing that again, red meat causes cancer. It's not impossible, but I'm coming from my scientific background. When somebody says this proves this, that is just not the way science is done. So it could say this study supports this hypothesis, but if somebody's coming out and saying, you know, this proves that, then again, that's a big red flag to say the least. And we can go a little deeper on some of those things. We're going to talk about pseudoscience and concepts like that. But yeah, I want to get Faraz here since we have him. Anything else I left out that you can remember, Corona, from last time?
Not at all. You hit them all. You hit them all, my friend.
Yeah, we touched on echo chambers, avoiding shiny objects, the complexity of all this, and the hierarchy of research as well. So when you have expert opinion, that's actually at the very base and the lowest form of research. And then again, that three-part model for anyone who missed last episode is it's not just, it's 1/3 is what the actual research says. And again, that's a very difficult thing to synthesize because real quick example of that is somebody was talking about intermittent fasting and they said, I looked at all the studies on intermittent fasting. And I said, bull. And what I looked at that, I went on PubMed, and that is the foremost kind of gold standard of where you're going to go find research articles. I typed in intermittent fasting and it had over 277,000 articles. I really doubt that fella who made that claim, and he might be a good dude and he might have just, you know, misspoke, but I really doubt that he actually looked at 277,000 things. We got a little spam in the comments here on YouTube. Naked HD XYZ online strips without closing. That's great. Anyway, we're going to move on from that. I don't know how to block that spam or report that spam right now. But anyway, the triad of research, again, is what the research shows, which is difficult. 1/3, though, is clinician experience. So Corona's been in the fitness space for 30-something years. I've been in the fitness space and health space for over 20-something years. So that clinician experience, however many thousands of people we've interacted with in that space, needs to be factored in to whatever that research is. And then that third part is the the client expectations and experiences. So that's cultural factors like we talked about with Aaron Clark on our previous episodes, all sorts of things like that. So hopefully I summed that up pretty well. There's a lot there. Again, we're trying to minimize it, but we're going to bring it over to Faraz, who is a on-air personality at WXYZ Detroit, which is an ABC affiliate. And again, Faraz, I'm going to throw it over to you to tell us what it is that you're doing here. Educate us.
Thanks for being here, Faraz.
I appreciate you guys. What you've been doing. I totally love the entire podcast that you've been building for quite some time now. Now, so as Bo said, I'm a journalist here in Detroit, a television reporter, and I basically work on news, bringing out information to people and letting them, you know, whether it is anything that helps the community, being the voice for the community, being the voice for the unheard, also highlighting a certain trend. In this case, it'd probably be, you know, for our purposes, it's going to be more fitness and nutrition. That's what we're talking about. Now, I know Bo and I, earlier we were talking about how there is a lot of misinformation in our community. And when I say community, it's safe to say around the world pretty much. And I think more so over here in the US, you know, that misinformation. Unfortunately, people think, you know, us journalists are behind that, which is, I want to say for the most part, it's not true. I do want to say that I think as a journalist, all of us have an intent to give as accurate information as possible. We all strive to do that. We all work hard day and night to do that. And it's only not us journalists, it's also anyone who works in the newsroom. So whether it's our photographers, whether it's the producers, whether it's the executive producers, anyone part of that world is always, their goal is to provide as accurate news as possible. Now, there are a couple of challenges when that happens. Is traditionally speaking, any news report that you watch is anywhere between a minute to a minute 30 seconds. Now that gets challenging. The reason why is because when you want to convey as much information as possible, it is unfortunately not possible. because we just have to pick the top 3 things and put it into a news report. If you're lucky, maybe you can include a 4th and a 5th, but anything beyond that, it's just hard to. And then on top of that, we are also on a time crunch. So what does that mean? That means we get assigned a story on but by the way, this is a general reporter's job. So, it'll differ from station to station, but a general assignment reporter, that's exactly what it is. They'll get the story on the day. If they're lucky, they might get it. They'll be notified about it in advance, but generally speaking, it'll be given on the day. And then in the span of 8 hours, they will have to find the people they need to speak to, an expert, and get a guest, so someone they can relate to with the public. All that needs to happen within a span of 3 hours, because then after that you have to go film, you got to edit. So it's not like we get 8 hours to do to find the guest and to find the expert. No, it's within those 3 hours we got to do that. So
can I jump in real quick? Because again, I have the if it bleeds, it leads concept down below. And again, you being there and always whatever you're willing to share, we appreciate. Is we've seen the newsroom, show some versions of things on air. The morning show is another popular recent show. I don't know if you've seen either of those or been a fan of them. I guess the question then, since we have you here, and if you don't mind, is how accurate are those in terms of the depiction of, we're not putting that story on because it's going to offend this person or our sponsors, or also like, are we looking at the ratings and is this story going to give us bigger ratings? So if you can riff off of that.
So, I'm not trying to say that this is exactly what happens at WXYZ or Channel 7. I'm just speaking generally, because keep in mind that I have an international experience as well. I've worked in newsroom in Dubai, and now I'm working here in the US. So generally speaking, it's a very similar atmosphere, because, once again, the goal is to provide as accurate information as possible to our viewers and provide them as fast as possible. Because remember, now that competition element is there. So you can't really sit on a news and hash it out while another station breaks it. So that element is there because we have to be as quick as possible in providing that information and as accurate as possible. So newsroom, the morning show, yeah, there are a lot of similarities and that's why I think I actually like both of those shows, because it kind of like, wow, that's so surreal. That's what I went through the other day.
Yeah.
And I think this is exactly where the problem lies, is because of those time constraints, because of those deadlines, there's that, rabbit hole where things get lost. And if we're looking for an expert, how many times, and this is just generally, I'm just saying this in a general sense, how many times have we really gotten a chance to vet that expert? So maybe, for example, if we're talking about Game Changer, the documentary, maybe this expert is really pro-veganism or pro-vegetarian, right? So in that case, he or she, that expert, will obviously come out guns blazing, like, no, you got to eat vegan food, you got to eat your vegetables, and maybe completely eliminate meat eaters.
So let me jump in real quick, because speaking of you mentioned time restraints, and we do have a caller actually joining us in a second. But the really interesting thing here, and I'm gonna put like a 2-minute cap on your response, and if that's okay, just for the sake of our time, is what you're talking about in this. It's a really interesting concept of what's emerged is this distrust of science, distrust of the CDC, obviously with Corona on the call, but COVID, coronavirus, no relation between the two of them, is this what's emerged as this distrust of science. So whether it's Anthony Fauci, whether it's the CDC, people change their minds. At the end of the day, again, the news organization, I guess, has the job to inform, to educate. Somebody have a fax going on in the back?
No, there's some construction going on. I can't do anything about that.
Okay, we can mute you. I'm going to mute you because I have the power to do that. And so just throwing that question at you, how do you feel about the distrust of science, or what can the news organization do to say, this is the CDC, folks, this is what the CDC recommends? Again, I've seen plenty of headlines that throw out there of like, CDC recommends mask wearing or no mask wearing, and then, it's a tricky thing. Again, that's why we're having this podcast, this long form version of it. But I don't know if that question you know, if you resonate with that, and feel free to modify that. But that's my question to you is where does this distrust of science play into what the news is responsible for reporting?
Look, as far as, you know, I know, like we do that on a regular basis. We, you know, quote CDC, we quote the appropriate authorities and experts. I think there's a lot of misinformation that comes out are people when they stop listening to experts and they start listening to social media influencers, for example.
But my uncle on Facebook said.
That's it. That's the one, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that trend is a dangerous trend.
Yes.
Because sure, I mean, I'm not saying stop loving your uncle. I'm not saying stop listening to your uncle, but, you know, believing in everything they say is not necessarily the right path to go. And you know, just like, I mean, they're human beings as well. They could be misinformed, but that doesn't mean you have to blindly follow them. I think hear them, but at the same time, we live in a day and age where you can verify facts so easily if you source the right information. So if you hear anything on the news, I'm not saying trust us blindly completely as well. Open your ears and eyes and see if we tell you something, and if you hear through our news report an expert telling you something, go online or speak to you know, a reputable source. So for example, in this direct example, if I have a fitness question, my go-to person is Dr. Bo. And the reason why I do that is because I know he's credible. He's got a degree. He's got his experience backing him up.
I got a few degrees, but that's okay.
A bunch of them, right? And so, but I will not come to Dr. Bo for a religious advice, right? So I'm not blindly following him.
Right.
I am following him for certain things, but not for everything.
Well, that's a perfect segue to. Well, go ahead, Corona, if you had a question.
No, go ahead. You got a guest. Well, I'll ask.
Well, yeah, I wanted to get to our guest, and again, I think this is good stuff. So we're gonna bring on Colin Frederick, and I'm gonna put you in the solo, my friend, and we're gonna throw it over to you, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Where are you located right now? Are you over there in Detroit as well?
Yeah, I'm in Detroit as well.
Awesome. So give us a little heads up, and you know, we'd love to answer your question. Health, fitness, demanding better.
Just a heads up, I don't see Colin though.
Either do I.
I have him on the solo layout, so I believe I don't know why. Oh, I took you guys off. So
okay, got it.
But yeah, so Colin, go ahead.
So as someone relatively new to the whole health, wellness, and fitness space, I got a lot of questions. So your expertise absolutely appreciated. I've been asking a lot of my body. I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lately, which is obviously very taxing if you want to do it multiple days a week. Mm-hmm. What should I be fueling my body with? You know, like what food should I be consuming when, so that I can optimize my not only recovery, but also strength growth, muscle growth, endurance, all that fun jazz.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's a great question. Recovery for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically. Corona's on here, so if you want to jump in, Corona, as well. I'm going to give my quick 2 cents, especially tying this into this whole concept of research. So number one for me is the ideal, the gold standard, and that I will always go to is all the research in the world in that triad I think you heard us talking about earlier of what does the research say, what is my experience as a clinician, and then what is your expectation and experience. So again, if I told you you should be eating 100 grams of pea protein a day, that might not work well for you. Because again, there was this study done, and maybe it was done in India, and that's where people are just very able to digest pea protein, and that's the thing that works best for them. So for you, I would say the number one answer is and the answer with a lot of these, and this is where we lose some people, and this is what Corona and I are trying to talk about, is it depends. Okay? Yeah. It depends is almost always going to be the answer. So the right answer from me, and if let's say you wanted to work with me, would be, let's see what you've done in the past. Okay. If you're relatively new and you haven't tried a lot of things, it's okay. What are you currently doing? And then let's see which levers we can pull on and what changes we can make and see what the effect is. Because that is science. That is a case study of N equals 1. N is the population. So if a study has 1,000 people, it's N equals 1,000. So the gold standard would be, let's experiment on you. And I can give you my sense of like, you probably need to have more protein. Everything you're doing should improve your sleep, because ultimately, if you're not sleeping better, we're going to be, you know, dragging, fighting against the current, so to speak. So protein for me is always going to be the biggest thing. Most people I work with undereat protein. Most people I work with don't breathe properly. So again, when you're talking 100%. About recovery, your nervous system, especially in something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is going to be a little bit off. And the breathing is so low-hanging fruit and can make huge impact. So other things on recovery too is your soft tissue mobilization. What does your movement practice look like? So you're doing these things and you're getting put in weird positions. And I'm going to, call out Faraz here, who I've helped him with a lot of his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu injuries because he never quite addressed, wrist strength and all these little things that come up as you start training something very unique like BJJ, if we can call it that. So I'm going to leave it there. If Corona wants to add anything, or if Colin, if you have other questions.
No, the only thing I'm going to add for Colin is really simple. Something that I repeat all the time. Look, man, it's not a one size fits all ever. There's so many different factors within the process of you getting recovery and being able to maximize what's best for you. And in the long term, you got to find out what that is, because what worked for me may not work for you. And what works for Bo may not work for you also. So this is kind of like, you're your own push, your own test dummy, in the sense of you actually are going to put your body through things and find out how things work. I can't say anything more than what Bo said. The mobility aspect is huge. The sleep aspect is huge. And yes, most people that we do deal with do not eat enough protein. It's very that simple.
And protein, just to be really clear on that, and what the science shows, the basic recommendations, coming back to our theme again, is for general maintenance of human living, you should be at about 35% of your body weight. So I don't know how much you weigh, or if you want to share how much you weigh.
I'm like 155, give or take.
Oh, you're small. You're a small man. You're a small man.
You look very tall on camera.
Yeah.
You look huge.
Good angling. I'm going to make the math simpler though. I'm going to make it 200 pounds because that's close. I'm a little under that, but I'm going to make it just so the math is simpler. So 35% of 200 pounds would be 70 grams of protein. An egg has 6 grams of protein. So just as a reference point, as basic maintenance, again, some things that the government puts out there, 35%. My minimum that I tell people as an athlete, at a minimum, you should be getting 70% of that. So I'm actually going to use this for you. And I'm going to calculate 155 times 0.7. So you should be getting 108 grams of protein a day just for basic survival, like maintenance of muscles, let alone you're doing an hour of intense activity as you progress. So that goes closer to 150 grams of protein. And again, the only way we're going to really play with that is see how you feel being active with that, and also making sure that you're going to stick to it. So what do you have in your fridge now? Again, this is where the individualization and personalization comes into it. So those are kind of the really big, broad strokes that we're going to paint. So if that does that make sense for you? Is that good for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a good reminder, especially the mobility aspect, because I think that's something that, like, if you got back pain, like I've had for years, I've worked in news and I've had a bad lower back. Mm-hmm. You hold that camera up there, that's 25 pounds,
right?
That's getting you real off center. And over the years, the way I dealt with it was just by avoiding it. And I didn't realize that what I needed to do at the time was strengthen it, give it that mobility, and give it the things that it needs that I just wasn't giving it at the time. And like you were saying, it's all individual. Like right now, I got myself some Wheaties with some protein powder, and I love hearing what you guys have to say, because it makes me feel like I'm on the right track. And it's absolutely individual and making it work for your life, because I can't expect anyone else to live this kind of lifestyle, because this is what works for me. It may not be what works for you guys or for Roz or, your grandma or someone like that.
Absolutely. And I mean, I have some very strong opinions about Wheaties that I'm not going to share right now. But just for the sake of time,
do me a favor. Don't disrespect the people who come on. Okay.
You called him a dummy. I mean,
I know I didn't call him a dummy. I would never call Colin a dummy. That's it.
You called him a test dummy. I mean, you could have chosen very different language. That's okay. Colin, we appreciate you being on.
Test dummy over lab rat all day.
There you go. So we appreciate you being on. We're gonna jump back to Faraz, and We're gonna send you a free mug or something. I don't know. No, we don't have mugs. We're gonna throw Faraz back on. Faraz, you have another caller, Kayla Rose, is it?
That's right. That should be Kayla. Yeah.
Okay. So do you wanna
let's jump into Kayla's question and see what you got. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, producer Faraz.
That's right, Faraz. Keep helping us, baby.
So Kayla
Rose, welcome.
Hey, nice to meet you guys. Hi.
Nice to meet you too. So tell us what we can do for you. What is your question?
So my question today, I do CrossFit as well. I just started, I guess, be about 3 months, been going pretty consistently. I've done strength training in the past before, more traditional programs, but I'm finding CrossFit's very different from just a traditional, I guess, strength training program, a lot more dynamic. You're moving a lot, like all the machines that I wouldn't normally use, rowers, climbing ropes, doing more than just pull-ups over bars. All that's brand new. And I was just wondering, can I use anything in a traditional strength program to get better at CrossFit? Because it seems like it's so much more like even you'd have to be kind of like a power lifter. There's a lot more power movements, and plus the cardio is a lot different, it's a lot more intense. You know, you would normally do like, I guess, like a dedicated power movement workout, like sprinting or something, to get better at that. So I'm just kind of curious, what can I use from, you know, a strength training program, if I should be using that at all, to get better at CrossFit?
Well, first of all, you look very, very young, Kayla. So you're talking to an old guy who's in his 50s. So that's number one. Number two, from my perspective and what I do, they can supplement one another for sure.
Okay.
That's one thing. The second thing is where I'm at the stage in my life and when I look at things, I look to counteract what I do physically on a given day so I can keep my body in alignment. So if I'm seated all day, which I am not, I'm going to do more mobility work. I'm going to strengthen my hip flex. I'm going to stretch my hip flex or stretch my chest and make sure and do things that are going to add to me having more longevity throughout my day. Bo, on the other hand, is a CrossFitter. But the one thing about Bo that I will say is that Bo has done both. At this stage in my life, I'm not doing CrossFit by any stretch, and I'm not a big fan of CrossFit. There are aspects of CrossFit that are okay.
If you missed the episode, Kayla, we just did an episode called "Corona Thinks CrossFit Sucks."
Yeah,
I wasn't a big believer before I started going. Now I'm having more fun. So
no, that's great. And if that's what works for you, I'm a big fan of whatever works for you and what you find is best for you, and that you can excel in. I'm not a one-size-fits-all type of person. It's each person's individual, but there's certain things that aren't individual. You still have to do the mobility work on a regular basis, and you have to, like Bo said earlier, we need to learn how to breathe better as people in fitness.
As humans in general.
So
I'm gonna throw in real quick. So yeah, I would encourage you to go check out the CrossFit Sucks episode, where I would say Corona lost. But that's just, hey, my biased take on that. But the same answer that we gave Colin, I don't know if you heard the entire question. I know you jumped on some point when we were talking to Colin, is a same kind of answer. Is there as Corona kind of alluded to, any of these answers are going to be, it depends, because there's all sorts of other factors, which is why research comes back to that topic of it's very difficult, because to say Kayla, improved her fitness X amount over whatever period of time, and then Faraz, who's been doing CrossFit for some time, he only improved, let's say you improved 10% over the course of a year, and Faraz only improved 5%. But then are we looking at like where was he? What other factors do you have going on in life? So all these things. The other part, though, to your question, I think more specifically, is you should get assessed. So that's one of the beauties of CrossFit, is it has every workout. We have our baseline or our girl workouts. There's Karen and Fran and Grace and all these things. And you have a score on all these different data points. So that is an assessment in and of itself. And that's kind of the libertarian view of CrossFit, is at the end of the day, if you did Grace, which is 30 clean and jerks at 95 pounds is the RX for girls. If you started out and you only did it at 55 pounds and it took you 5 minutes to do it, and again, a year later, you were able to do it at a heavier weight and a little faster, and you did 95 pounds and it took you 4 minutes, you've clearly gotten more fit. So we have that assessment built in. So as long as all of those numbers are moving in the right direction and you're not getting more aches and pains, that's the kind of beauty of the system of CrossFit. It's constantly varied, high intensity, functional movement. So from that perspective, you shouldn't need to do a lot of other supplementing if the programming is done well. And again, I've been around CrossFit for a very long time. There's over 15,000 CrossFit gyms in the world, at least whatever the latest statistics are. And again, my 2 cents on all that is, again, if we come back to assessing you and your joint health. So if you're doing workouts and your shoulder range of motion is not going past, and I can't see your ear from the side, then we're talking about maybe there are some things we could improve upon. So now we need to assess you in those movements. And that's where I come in as a doctor of physical therapy. I work at a CrossFit gym right now. And I tell, a lot of times folks wait until they have an injury to come see me. So if your question is, what should I be doing? The answer is, we should assess you head to toe and look at, these whatever 50 different movements. How do you do on ring dips? How can you hold your positions overhead? How do you hold the bottom of a squat? How can you hold that stuff and learn to breathe there? There's all these journeys. So yes, I would love, I could talk about this. If you can't tell, I'm very passionate
for hours.
But the simple answer I'm going to throw at you is, again, get assessed. We can do that virtually. I'm not going to keep plugging myself, but whether it's somebody in person, whether you want to get assessed by me online, we'll give you a little discount codes because you came on here as a guest. But yeah, does that make sense? And again, I apologize if I went all over the place there.
No,
Kayla, just to, not to interrupt you, but just to make something perfectly clear that in anything that we do, we need to actually have that baseline. We do need to be assessed so that we can actually work at a very, very high level when you're doing very stressful, high intensity type workout. So getting an assessment is a must. And you need an assessment in any form of, exercise program before you start so that you can actually go from point A to point B. Go ahead, Bo.
Yeah, I was just going to add real quick is again, the analogy here is you're driving a race car, right? And so you would have your brakes checked, you would have your tire pressure checked, all that stuff, 100 points of checking every little thing before you were to drive that race car from 50 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour. And what CrossFit is a sport, it's a fitness regimen, but it's high intensity. So as you're having more fun, and I appreciate that you threw that term in there because it can be really fun. Even though it's suffering and things like that, but that shared suffering can be fun. And as you start to push your body and see those results and avoid the injuries, that's where it's really fun. And that's where, again, if you can drive and keep checking that, what that oil engine light, that little light that comes on the dashboard, that's something that if you don't check, you're probably going to have an issue at some point. And so how do you get the most out of it? And it comes back to, you didn't really give us your goals. And again, I was kind of going around that, but if your goal is to just get more fit, awesome. There's ways we can look at that. If your goal is to avoid injury, then we're talking about a different conversation. So coming back to it, again, it depends. And it really, there's a lot of layers to this question. So hopefully that made some sense, Kayla.
Get assessed.
Appreciate it. I will. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
yeah, we're going to, oh, that's the wrong thing. Sorry, guys. I'm new to this production thing. And we're going to remove her and throw Faraz back on. Hey there, fella.
Faraz.
Hello. That was some really good interaction right there. And I'm glad that, both Kayla and Colin had some great questions to ask. Because here's the thing. When it comes to body imbalances, I don't think people realize how much of a role it plays in recovery, injuries, and even your progression in your fitness journey. I remember once Bo explaining to me that, if your shoulder is tight, people don't even realize it could actually be triggered. Yeah, the pain could be coming from your back because your back's tight. And it was such
I'm gonna throw in a quick soundbite for that.
Okay.
Is usually where the pain is the victim, yes, but the criminal is elsewhere. Again, when we have back pain, Colin mentioned he has back pain, and he's saying, I have a camera up here, right? Yeah. It's not because the back is the problem. It might be weaker. We can strengthen it, but again, we have to figure out why that is. So throwing back to you, sorry.
And you also, before Faraz goes, we are what we repeatedly do. So
correct.
We have to be conscious of the habitual nature of what we do on a daily basis.
And that plays a big role, right? Like what kind of job you're in, like kind of what's your work. If you're constantly at a desk typing, then, you have definitely got back problems. Your posture is weak. It's poor.
And your training, and I think Corona said this on a previous episode, is your training should be primarily focused on reversing that damage that's happening, because 100%. You're not necessarily going to change your job. So you should be, just like your diet may be missing. Again, if you're a vegan, vegetarian for ethical reasons, great. But your diet is lacking these certain things, whether it's, iron, vitamin B12, all these things. So your supplementation should be focused around whatever your current thing is missing. So if your life and your job is to sit at a desk or to hold a camera, then your training should primarily, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do BJJ, but there should be that element of, okay. And again, most people, bad posture, cool. We need to do 1,000 pulls a day to undo all that bad 100%. Posture. And again, if we get these foundational components down, that's where we make the biggest difference.
And the other thing is about doing those pulls that he's talking about. It's not what you're doing. It's actually how you go about it, how you do it, how you execute it, and the precision that you work at. Because the more precise, the better benefit you're going to get from it, the more results you're going to get, and the less injury is going to come about.
So, and here's the problem. Here's the problem is, like, where do people start? How do they even think about that? Because for the most part, people are, let's face it, your average person, if they hear fitness, they're thinking about, all right, let's go to one of those, commercial gyms, $10 per month, go there, but they don't know what to do. I'm just going to, like, maybe hit some dumbbells, some leg press, some squats, and call it a day, right? But everyone has a complete different view of it. But is it right? Most of the time, no. So what do? They'll probably look at some influencers. They're looking at their page, and they're probably lean, mean fighting machine. But it's not, if they're in their video, in their 10-second video or a minute video, if they're showing you how to do a bench press and you're looking like, oh my gosh, this person's so ripped, they're thinking that's the way to go. But like you guys have said, if that works for them, it's not necessarily it's going to work for you. And you can get to that, but there are certain steps prior to, before you get to that stage. And I think that's where people go wrong, and they start believing that. And when they don't see the results because they never set the foundation right, then they abandon it. They're like, I can't do it. And that goes same for nutrition as well, by the way.
But the problem is that we had it in another episode. What people are doing now is system training. You're applying a system onto someone instead of assessing that person and finding out what they need. And the more and more we go into places, if a trainer's not, or a therapist isn't assessing you off of inception, it's like building a house without plans. It's absolutely absurd. You have to find out where the problems are, and you have to counteract or counterbalance what they do daily so you can get back to a neutral setting. And when you go into gyms, they're not doing the assessment. They're throwing stuff at you. They're selling.
Let's also add another thing to that, to that, Corona, as well. What are the chances of these people at the gym are actually qualified to do the assessment? Because that's another thing. There are so many gyms out there. At least I know, for example, like I know when I was in Dubai, I know a lot of trainers who just had their basic training certificate. They weren't qualified enough to do proper assessment. And then you're thinking, oh, well, this person's cheap and, couple of bucks, and they're assessing me. They're just doing you basic thing, which they probably got off the internet. So once again, when you're, I think of it as an investment. And if you're actually getting the right assessment, the proper assessment, you're investing in yourself, because you're going to move better, not only in your fitness journey, but even in your day-to-day activities. If you're at work, because let's face it, if you're lethargic, if you haven't recovered, you're not going to be thinking straight. You're not going to be focused. You're just going to be thinking like, when is this day going to end so I can jump back into the bed and watch some Netflix and grab some pizza? Essentially that's what it is.
Yeah. So I'm gonna double, triple down on all that and say, again, that's my primary mission as a business, as a provider of health information, is I want to identify and assess every single person. I just offered both Kayla and Colin on our private chat here, online assessment that I'm trying to do. My goal is to do that on everyone. Just like you go to your doctor, right? It's very quick. It's very easy. Most people, and this is coming back to our science and research, is it's going to be hard to find a single system. And there are a few systems that do these assessments, but from a physical, head to toe, orthopedic, should I start exercise? Again, if you've ever seen any of these commercials, it says, check with your doctor before starting any major exercise program. So my goal is to be that resource to say, hey, you've cleared head to toe. I'm actually going to pull up, and Corona, jump in if you want, because I'm going to pull up a PDF here that I want to share with you guys.
Listen, the assessment is the vital component to all of this. And if we're not assessing people and you walk into a gym and you're trying to get something to help you and you don't get an assessment, it could be a private guy who everybody knows. It doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. You know, the influencer, we talked about the influencer last time. There was a woman who was making millions of dollars who just got sued by the state of Texas because she never produced anything. She wasn't qualified. She wasn't qualified. She wasn't certified. She was the girl on Instagram who was in her 20s who looks great no matter what, you know, and she sold and now she's being sued. And this is happening, you know, often, I'm assuming, but it's not something I would look into. You have to do your research when you're looking for somebody to take care of your most important asset, which is you.
Yeah. I also want to add another aspect I want to add to that is, you know, when you're actually looking for that expert, I think, and feel free to correct me, I believe find that expert in that field. So for example, if you want to correct your nutrition, will I go to a nutritionist that's at a hospital, or will I go to a nutritionist that does, you know, works with athletes? Because I'm an athletic person, you know, I do jiu-jitsu myself, I do CrossFit. And so my needs are completely different to a nutritionist who's sitting at a hospital who will just say, oh, just make sure you get a certain amount of carbs, certain amount of protein, certain amount of fat, and you'll be good. You know, just measuring that BMI index. I mean, keep in mind, according to just BMI, let's be honest, like a bodybuilder is technically supposed to have a heart attack any minute, right? Just based on the BMI. So that's another thing is, if you're looking for that nutrition advice, look for what exactly is your lifestyle all about. If you're an athlete, you should probably be looking for someone who's working with an athlete, or with, you know, with teams, with sporting teams who actually knows what an athlete needs or what the requirements are. Even better if you can find it in the same field. So if you're doing jiu-jitsu, find that nutritionist who works with, you know, jiu-jitsu athletes.
And that's what we say on the back end of a lot of these things is the niches are in the riches. The riches are in the niches. I said that backwards. And so that's where it is. Yeah, for sure. And people who are willing to double down on being like, I am working with dancers or Brazilian jiu-jitsu folks, those are definitely the folks that are probably going to provide the best service for you, for sure. I try to be more of a generalist, which I think has its place, and probably, again, is taking money out of my pockets rather than me saying, I'm going to work with, you know, just CrossFitters or whatever, and really doubling down on that marketing. But that comes back to, and something that came up for me as we were talking, and Faraz and I talked about this before we came on here, is Faraz has close to 10,000 followers just on Instagram. I don't know how many you have across all the other platforms, but I'm getting close to 4,000. I'd like, you know, you guys go follow me on there. But he has almost 2.5, 3 times as many followers as me. So anything he posts, he's got a much wider reach, and he might have more engagement than me because he's more into the algorithms, into the metrics and all that stuff. So if he posts something about fitness, and he does post a lot about fitness, I've seen more people comment on his post about, hey, what do you think I should do for this workout or this nutrition, versus I'd like to think I'm a little more knowledgeable, but I don't have the marketing chops. And this is the thing with research, is most researchers and the scientists are not going out and putting themselves out there saying, I know what I'm talking about, you should listen to me, because that's not how science works. And again, the more certainty you have with these things, the less reputable you probably are. And again, if you heard our answers to Kayla and Colin, right? Colin.
Colin.
Yeah, if you heard our answers there, it was like, well, we're not like, you should eat 700 grams of protein every day and 300 grams of carbs. Like, it's never going to be that much. I did come up with like a kind of thing of, yeah, maybe you should try that many protein. But that's the thing where it becomes a bit of an interesting match. And we are coming up a little bit on time, and I wanted to bring it all the way back to research, news, science. And so we covered a lot of cool things, and we had these cool call-ins, and I'm really appreciative of our folks there. I did want to share this since I had it pulled up real quick. This is my kind of assessment. And so for those watching, or you can see it online, though, you probably can't see it. If you're on audio, you're going to have trouble seeing this. So maybe go check it out on video. But this is like my little report card I give people that I think everyone should have. You have your postural piece in there. You have how well you push, pull, twist. And this is only one part of a couple of different pages that I'm doing. So if you don't have that kind of annual orthopedic assessment or ever in your life, and you're doing things like CrossFit and wanting to be an athlete, like you should treat your body like an athlete. Like just even if you're not driving your car 100 miles an hour, you're just trying to get from New York City to Los Angeles, you should have your car assessed so that it's going to get you to do that job.
Bo, let me do a little caveat for you, and just kind of, everybody's an athlete. You need to get yourself checked out before you start exercise. The injury rate, we mentioned it last time. The injury rate for people who run is 90%. Period. It's 90%. Get yourself checked out so you don't, it sucks. As you get older, the injuries last longer and it gets worse. When you're younger, you can recover quicker. But get yourself checked first. And that way you can put yourself in a position to be successful.
Well, let me ask you this, Corona, then. When it comes to assessment, I don't think people should just get assessed just only once in their life. It should be an ongoing
annual
thing.
Orthopedic, just like you go to your doctor to get your blood work done.
So let's just do, I'm just going to give it, Bo's dead on, and I agree with Bo 100%. But I will also say, as your body changes, if you go into an exercise program, you haven't been in an exercise program, you go in, your body's going to change. The programming needs to change to support you. The assessment has to come also. There has to be a point in time. I assess clients all the time, and they're with me for 20 years. I'm still assessing them because you still have to get the right programming into that person. We're not, as fitness people, we're not meeting our people where they're at. We're just not. We're putting stuff on them when we have to meet these people where they're at, and we really have to counteract what they do daily. I say it all the time. Assessment is the holy grail for you to have longevity.
And on that note, I think, again, we can talk about that topic for hours and hours, and we have a few other episodes about it. But I wanted to, since we have Faraz here, finish up on news, research, science. So
no, I had a question. I still hold it. And I want to ask Faraz real quick. Because of the speed of news that we have now, and everything's trying to be fast and be quick, has that really added to the lack of credibility within the news itself in terms of researching and stuff like that? Because you guys got to be fast, and you don't have time to put it out.
So that's a good question, Corona. And, and I just want to circle back and remind everyone that, once again, as a journalist, our goal is, and our intention is, to provide you as credible news as possible with as accurate facts and data. But because of the time crunch, because we also have to meet deadlines, we are under pressure as well. There are chances that we might pick up the wrong data. For example, maybe data that is, if we had a little bit more time, once again, not our intention to, but if we've come across a data that only one person or one entity has studied, but I think the ideal would be if we could just compare that data with a bunch of other studies, that'd be fantastic. But if we just ran with one study, and if that study shows that you have a problem in the world of fitness and nutrition, and this is what's the problem, then that's what we're going to report on. And so, yes, there have been instances where, once again, I'm not speaking for the channel that I work for, I'm just speaking in general. There have been instances where reporters would get flack for, wait a minute, you reported on this, but if you look at this, it's so-and-so, the information is not correct. And then, we would have to respond by saying, look, in that moment, this is the study that we went for, this is the study that we looked at, and based on that, this is what we're sharing that information with you. So I can see how, I don't want to say misinformation from our end, but I would say it's easy to get lost. The information can get lost in translation. I think that can definitely happen. And yes, in the world that we live in, because we're competing with not only other networks, we're also competing with social media as well. There are a lot of times where we want to give out breaking news, but that news is actually already broken on social media platforms. So it's just like any other industry. We are also facing that world of competition as well, and hence the deadlines are tighter, hence the time frame is tighter. But here we are. This is the world that we live in.
Yeah, man, we appreciate sharing. You're gonna go, Corona?
Yeah, I just had one more question to really ask him. How we need media literacy in this country, period. We need media literacy. How would you advise people on how to do research and be efficient because you got to do things fast. You got to get things out quick, not just fast, but got to be accurate. How would you, the best way to do that?
So, Corona, once again, I like that question as well. I think here's the thing. First thing first, sticking with the world of nutrition and fitness, first thing first, go for credible sources. If you're just looking at how Bo brought that point up, like who's got the highest followers, I have more followers than Bo, but that does not make me a credible person when it comes to fitness and nutrition. All right. But unfortunately, there will be some people out there who would think, wait a minute, Faraz has got more followers than Bo. And whatever I post is going to be more credible. No, that's not the case. I don't have a degree in fitness or nutrition. And so go for credible sources. Doctors, whether it's medical doctors or PhD doctors, you should give them preference over people who are just saying, oh, we are movement experts. That doesn't, like, there's no such thing as movement experts. You can come up with any fancy title, but have they got that degree backing that up? Have they got that experience backing them up? Then also, when it comes to like other, for example, when we do anything like, I know this is a little off topic, but just if you do anything COVID related, we look at CDC data, because once again, these are the authorized bodies to talk about it. They've got scientists working for them to talk about it. So look for authorized entities, look for approved entities, look for professional experts in the field who've got degree to back them up. Go for it, Bo.
I was just going to add in, because again, that coming back to my question before we went to the callers there of the distrust of science, I think tying in Corona's question, the thought or hope here is the science, not just media literacy, but science literacy, because people are like, oh, they said to not wear masks, and now they're saying to wear a mask, and now they're saying don't, and they change their mind, and there's reasons for this. So obviously we could say, hey, they could have done a better job of, on this mask thing. But at the end of the day, I think the important piece here that, it's hard again for somebody in 90 seconds to say, don't forget, guys, science changes, as things emerge, as we get more data, we every day, every week, every month, we're getting more and more data, especially around this COVID thing. And we have to trust that, again, we're going to have different perspectives and different things. Hey, if anyone forgot, we used to think that that the sun revolved around the earth, and that seems to not be true. It took a long time, and a lot of those things, we used to think the earth was flat. Some people still do. How do we go about? Yeah.
But part of that problem, Bo, is that the consumer's lazy, number one, and number two, they want to have somebody like Faraz, who's giving us the news, that he's fact-based. It doesn't matter. That's my man. He's always there. And the room for nuance is gone. They want the answer now. They want it fast. And since we're not giving it to them fast, all of a sudden you're not a credible source. And that's absurd.
And I'm going to leave this as a bit of a cliffhanger for a future episode, because we're coming up on time. But you mentioned that. And again, we're the emergence of the Joe Rogans, the 4-hour podcast. The podcast that we're on now, though, we're coming up on an hour. The long form, the other alternative to news of John Oliver and Jon Stewart and the Daily Show and things like that have emerged over the last couple of decades now. I guess my question, since we have Faraz, and we can maybe close off on this or leave this as a cliffhanger, is what do you think of is that a more appropriate way to deliver the news? Or, is the news just whatever we expect it to be, the local news, and we're going to do nice stories about, this girl selling Girl Scout cookies and this person saved a cat in the tree, and we want to highlight those local stories. And what do they call them? Good touchy-feely
stories.
Positive
Bring
stories.
Back Walter Cronkite.
Yeah. So the question is, these long form emergence of podcasts, which we are here doing. How do you feel about that as a journalist? The fact that, again, just like we're saying, there's no movement experts, but Joe Rogan over here, people are going to say, what is he doing? Because I want to do whatever he does. So, where do you feel about that? I know that's a very loaded question.
It's a huge question.
Well, okay, so let me, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. So the information trend has changed. Okay, so everything is moving online. I mean, literally, our news, by the time it comes on air, it's kind of old if you really think about it. That's why, hence that time crunch that I was talking to you about. Most of the news, breaking news or information is passed on social media right away, up front. And because to try to catch up with that speed, we don't have that luxury of sharing so much more information. And that's, I know, one thing that Colin was also sharing about as well in a private chat is that, you know, we just touch upon a couple of points and then share it and put it out there because we have to catch up with that speed as well. But, you know, when it comes to newer platforms, I think podcasts are definitely one way to go. But as long as you are listening to credible podcasts, I mean, you know, for example, I could come up with a podcast of fitness and nutrition, but is it really going to be credible in a sense? Will I be able to share sound advice in how to grow your journey in the fitness world? No, but I could probably share just my journey. You know, like, this is what has worked for me, and I think that's where, if you're honest about it and you're not trying to oversell your product by claiming to be an expert now, this is where I think, you know, that the right intention comes into play. So, for example, you and Dr. Bo and Corona, our goal is over here to promote, you know, healthy living, whether it's through a fitness program, an effective fitness program, recovery, nutrition. That's great. But now all of a sudden, if you guys start talking about like religion or COVID, you know, and your followers start to believe it, that's misinformation, because, no offense, you guys have no credibility to talk about that topic. So that's why, you know, I think new platforms are super important. I think podcasts, social media, these are powerful platforms if used properly. And just be responsible. That's another big thing. I mean, you know, some people are just not responsible enough and they keep sharing information that is not accurate. And look, we live in a country that has freedom of speech. So no one's taking that away from you. But I guess at some point, everyone needs to be responsible, and whatever information you put on the internet.
You still can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater.
Correct.
And that's what a lot of folks are doing, unfortunately. And that is the misinformation. They should be held accountable.
Yeah, I think they should be, and because at the end of the day, it's going to harm someone. I mean, like, if your word is not going to harm anyone, if it's just if you're just fooling around, that's a different story. But if it's going to harm someone in the long run, for sure, whether it's, you know, for COVID, if it's for the mask or vaccine, whatever your belief was at that time. I mean, I know the restrictions have gone down a lot more now when it was back in the days. But anyways, coming back to nutrition and fitness, once again, I would still say, even if social media and podcasts are the future for passing out that information, just be as a listener, listen to the ones that are credible. And how do you find that credibility? By making sure that they're experts in the field, they have a degree or they've got years of experience in it, so you know that they're credible. And B, if you are doing podcasts or you are a social media influencer, be responsible. I'm not saying don't share information, but share more on, if you're not an expert, then share more on, this is what works for you.
And I wanted to touch base there real quick before we should wrap it up here. Is again, one of the red flags and the consumer's guide here, coming back to that, when folks say, here's the study we're basing that off of, and like, go look deeper into this study yourself, or I'm going to really give you a lot of information of, this was a study done on 30 college students, and they were all Cuban Americans. And so maybe Corona could say, hey, maybe that does apply to me to some extent.
Not in my age bracket.
Yes, very good. Whatever that is. So I do think that when studies get reported, again, and this is, you know, would love to go deeper into this. And as you guys can tell, we could probably keep going for hours, but we got to be respectful of everyone's time. Is when you throw out that study, again, red meat causes cancer. Let's go deeper in that. And what does that mean? And again, should I make a change based on seeing that? And this was a big thing there. Speaking of all that, breaking news is Deshaun Watson is going to the Browns. I just got my phone blowing up. So that's something. But but we're gonna wrap it up here, guys. I really wanted to thank Colin Frederick and Kayla Rose for coming on and sharing their questions with us. And of course, Faraz, for being on here. And I'll share here again. I appreciate all our years of friendship going back to 2014 with that lovely photo that we had there.
Let's bring it up for good time's sake.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm gonna pull that up as our closing thing.
For us, thanks for coming, man. We really appreciate you.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
There he is. There he is. Much younger, less good looking. This guy's getting better looking as he ages. So yeah, guys, thank you again, everyone. And we're gonna call it there. Any closing thoughts from Corona?
No, man. Listen, we're going to do another part of this, so we got a lot more to dive into.
A lot more in there, yeah.
I just wanted, like I said, I just want to thank Faraz for being here and educating our base, because we're trying to empower everybody and be the consumer's guide. And it couldn't be done. We couldn't get this type of information without someone like Faraz. So truly appreciate you.
And Colin in the private chat said Browns to the Super Bowl, baby. So clearly he's a little delusional, and we have to ignore everything he said.
So he's not coming back on.
He's not coming. No,
I'm a Bills fan, Colin.
I'm a Jets fan, so nobody cares. Anyway, Faraz, tell everyone where they can find you, go follow you, and check you out.
Well, it's very simple. It's right there. Let me get this right there. It's Faraz Javed. That's the one. That's the handle for everything. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
Make it simple.
That's the place to go. Yeah.
Make it simple. All right, we're gonna rock out with Kanye's little instrumental. And again, appreciate you guys. We just went over the hour. I've been watching The Genius on Netflix. It's pretty entertaining so far. But yes, thank you again. I am going to, before we close off, and Browns fan here, Mr. Colin, Wheaties, probably not the healthiest thing you could ever be doing. We could talk about that later, though. I sent them my email. They're going to reach out to me. I've literally had people say, like, I think I'm doing all the right things, and I'm eating Wheaties. And they did a good job of marketing, and I think that's a great example of that pseudoscience that we're talking about that gets dispersed. We're going to talk about game changers. I know Faraz has a lot of thoughts on that. Again, if you guys, we talked about it last time, we're going to go a lot deeper into game changers. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. And we definitely want to do a deep dive there. So closing out, hope you guys got better today, demand better, got 1% better, and see y'all next time.